All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about something wild today, a connection between the tiniest motor inside your body and the most powerful AI on the planet. Yeah, really. It's a story about something called a ratchet, about a single word, and how real meaningful direction can somehow pop out of total, complete chaos. So that really brings us to the big question, right? How does purpose, how does it just emerge from chaos? I mean, think about it. We see order all around us. A tiny protein that walks, a sentence that makes perfect sense. But where does that come from? Well, the answer, and this is the cool part, isn't about beating chaos into submission. It's about using it. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's shrink ourselves down. I mean, way, way down, to the nanoscale right inside one of your cells. And what we find there is this incredible paradox, this tiny little walker just trying to make its way through an absolute storm of thermal energy. So let me introduce you to kinesin. You've got billions, literally billions of these little guys marching along these protein highways inside you, carrying all sorts of important stuff. But their world? It's pure chaos. They are just constantly being slammed by vibrating water molecules. You might have heard of it. It's called Brownian motion. And yet, somehow, in the middle of this molecular mosh pit, kinesin takes these perfect, reliable steps. Each one is just 8 nanometers long. I mean, that is ridiculously precise. So the question is, how on earth does it pull that off? How does it walk in a straight line when everything around it is pure random chaos? And right there, that's where you see the genius of life itself. It's not trying to fight the storm. It's not trying to overpower all that randomness. No, it uses that chaotic energy. It harnesses it. And that right there is the fundamental trick. It's the key to this whole thing. So how does it actually work? Well, this whole mechanism has a pretty cool name. It's called the Brownian ratchet. And you should think of it less like a powerful engine and more like a really clever filter for probabilities. Okay, let's walk through one single step for kinesin. First, one foot, or head, is stuck to the track. Then, the trailing foot lets go. Now, this next part is absolutely critical. It doesn't push forward, it just floats. It gets jiggled around randomly by all that thermal energy. It's doing a Brownian search. But then, and here's the magic, a little jolt of energy changes the game, making the spot in front of it way more attractive to bind to. So, when the floating foot just so happens to randomly bump into that forward spot, bam, it locks in. Step complete. And that, my friends, is a Brownian ratchet. It doesn't actually create the motion. The chaos is already doing that. It just takes all that random jiggling and, well, it biases it. It makes it way more likely to go one way than the other. It's kind of like a turnstile at a subway station that only lets you go through in one direction.
This is the big takeaway, right here. Kinesin isn't pushing forward against the storm. It's just redefining what forward even means in that moment. It just tilts the probabilities so that a random search is almost guaranteed to end up in a forward step. So, yeah, direction just emerges from a biased probability.
Okay, so you've got this tiny biological machine. Now, this is where things get really, really interesting. We're going to take this whole idea, this principle, and we're going to jump into a totally different world, the world of AI and language. We're going to go looking for a ratchet, but not on a protein track, in the space of meaning itself. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds like a crazy leap, doesn't it? What could a tiny motor in a cell possibly have in common with a large language model? One is hauling cargo, the other is writing poems. But stick with me here, because the way they both create meaningful, directional stuff, it's shockingly similar. Okay, look at this table. The parallel is just wow. For kinesin, the track is a physical microtubule. For LLM, it's the sequence of words it's already written. The context. The search, kinesin has its random Brownian search. The LLM has its token sampling, where it's randomly exploring possible next words. The energy from ATP that biases kinesin, that's just like the network's activations, which shape the logic landscape for the LLM. And then the commitment. Kinesin locks its foot down to transport cargo. The LLM commits to a token, a word, to transport meaning. It's a one-to-one map. And I gotta stress this. This is not just some cute poetic metaphor. The analogy is structural. It's functional. Both of these systems, one biological, one digital, they do the exact same thing. They start with a huge space of possibilities. They use a bias to shape the probabilities of what could happen next, and then they lock in a choice. And that choice moves everything forward irreversibly. Okay, so if this pattern shows up in our cells and in our most advanced AI, you have to wonder, where else is it hiding? It feels like we might have stumbled onto something really fundamental here, like a universal pattern for how order gets created out of nothing, from physical stuff all the way up to abstract meaning. Think about evolution for a second. It's the same exact pattern. You have the random chaotic search, that's genetic mutation, and then you have the bias, the gradient. That's natural selection. It constrains the chaos, making some outcomes stick and others fade away. It's a ratchet. Or what about just thinking, our own cognition? Maybe it works the same way. You've got the noise of all your neurons firing randomly, but that chaos is guided by the existing pathways in your brain, these attractor states, which bias all that random activity towards a coherent thought. It's another ratchet. And to bring it full circle, back to the LLM, it's harnessing the noise of pure probability, but then it applies this massive coherence bias from all the books and websites it's ever read. And that bias is what makes sure the next word makes sense. See? Same pattern, again and again. Once you see this pattern, you start seeing it everywhere. Molecular motors, how proteins fold, how our brains work, evolution, language, the list goes on. This idea of biased randomness or constrained exploration, it really seems like it's one of nature's, and now our own, most fundamental tools for building complex, orderly things. So let's pull all this together. What does this mean for how we think about order itself? Well, it kind of forces us to throw out the old idea of a top-down blueprint, right? Order isn't something that's meticulously planned. It's something much more alive, something that emerges. And that's the big mind shift here. We're so used to thinking that to get order, you have to design it, to impose it on a system. But what this shows us is that order can just grow. It can bubble up from a very simple recipe. You just need two ingredients, randomness, and a gentle push in one direction. You can really boil this whole thing down to a simple, powerful little equation. Noise plus a gradient equals direction. You take the raw, chaotic energy of randomness. You add a gentle constraint or a bias. And what you get out isn't more chaos. It's progress. It's meaning. And what's just mind-blowing about this is that there's no grand plan, no map. Kinesin has no idea where it's ultimately going. The LLM has no clue what the final sentence will be, the coherence, the purpose. It all just emerges one tiny, local step at a time. All it does is follow the bias of the immediate next step. So that leaves us with a pretty big final thought to chew on. If this pattern is everywhere, from cells to AI to evolution, maybe this is what intelligence is. Not some perfect logical calculation, but something more like probabilistic navigation. Just the simple, elegant art of moving through a massive landscape of possibilities, using a little bit of noise and a little bit of bias to find a path that means something. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?